This is one of my favorite buildings at the farm. How about you?
Yeah, it's an interesting history. You know, we already had a church, St. Mark's Church across the lake, and really didn't need another church. But a friend of mine from Lenoir called me and asked me was I interested in a log church, and I told him I really wasn't. But then he said it's an Episcopal church. Well, I'm an Episcopalian. I said no, I'd like to look at it. So I went over there and looked at it, and sure enough, it was a log church with a different type of joining. It was a rabbet joint with pegs upside down. Had the original shutters with square nails. The whole church had been a rental property at the time he talked to me about it, and I came over and I said, man, that'd be great, I'd love to have it. And I asked him how much he wanted for it, and he wouldn't tell me. He said, I have some people that need to come over and approve the moving of the church because I'm sure it was an historical marker. And I guess the people he brought the next day, and I really didn't want to show them around that day because my festival was the following Saturday and I had 1,000,001 things to do. But because it was such an unusual structure, I went ahead and took that Sunday off along with my wife Becky, and we came over and I spent most of the day showing them around the rest of the village. And as they left, I said, well, how much do you want for the church? He said, well, I'll tell you, there are 8 of us here and they all have wives. We need about 16 tickets for your festival next Saturday. I said, I had already sold out of tickets, so I called Becky real quick. I said, Becky, print 16 quick tickets for these people who are going to get our church for them. And so this is kind of where it all began. And my wife has the knowledge of the history of this church.
Well, before we actually talk about the interior and the good stuff in there, the church was built or used because a lady from that part of Caldwell County had gone to New York and gone to a very fancy Episcopal church, and she wanted one of those for her area, and she convinced the priest there to come down to North Carolina and start an Episcopal church where she lived. And he came down, and there was a gentleman close by who said, yes, you can use this old schoolhouse, this old building that had been a school, and have your church there. And they started church there, but they were a little suspicious of Episcopalians back then. Mostly Baptists had settled in that area, and so he told them that they would have to stop using that building. So they bought some property in the little town of Whitnall and got a couple of acres, and with a lot of volunteers and a lot of help, and the lady helped them raise some money. So they built this structure right here.
When was it built?
It was built in, I think, 1881,
1881.
something like that. And as you say, it was pretty rough, but we were able to move it and save the interior, the beaded board that they had used for wainscoting and for the ceiling.
They hadn't even changed the flooring to the kitchen.
As you said, that was used as an apartment. In fact, it was a doctor's office too for a short while. Then they used it as an apartment, and they didn't even change the altar. You stepped up onto the altar, and that was the kitchen area.
That was the kitchen, yeah.
It's an interesting building. I love the decoration on the shutters where they use nails.
It was a kind of their form of, I guess it would be folk art, where they decorated the shutters to make it different than another type of church.
They talked in the history of it about using the big fireplace and the mantle. And
well, you know how long it took me to get that white paint off that mantle?
It was still
a whole
nice,
day.
It's nice. We're using the same mantle, we're using the same flooring, we're using the same wainscoting, the same ceiling. So we were able to save most of it. And interesting about the little porch, when we found it did not have a porch at all, but we found a lady who lived across the street who was 95, I think, at the time. She was in her mid-90s, and she was able to describe the porch, the belfry, what it looked like.
Yeah.
So we were able to redo the porch back as it had been.
And we also went to the Lenoir, and they had a history book with a picture of the railing in front of the altar, and it's replicated that exact
We knew how to
form.
do that,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
This church was taken into St. James Lenoir at one time. So it was called Chapel of Peace when we
Right.
got it.
And interesting that the original Reredos altar and the bishop's chair was still there in St. James. And I went to get some more history and photograph it, and the bishop's chair on the back was called Vardry Macby, and there's a picture of it. They wouldn't sell it for any amount of money because I can understand it's part of their heritage. But Vardry Macby was my great-great-grandfather.
Great.
Three greats-grandfather. He was originally from Greenville, South Carolina.
And he had donated, well, he grew up actually in Lincoln.
Had grown up in Lincoln and
He
was
gave
very
us
wealthy,
this.
was in the railroads, and either he was a minister there or donated a lot of money for that particular church.
Lots of interesting things inside.
Why don't we go in and point out some interesting artifacts that I've collected over the last probably 8 to 10 years to furnish it.
Okay.
We moved the Chapel of Peace in 1998, and with this history of the belfry, a good friend and woodworker of mine, Dr. Bill Brooks, actually reconstructed the tower part. As we come to the church itself, you'll notice the mantel over the fireplace. It's all original. The rock for the fireplace is also original to this building. On top of the mantel, my wife, who is a folk art collector, found this carved rock of Joseph and Mary. We found it on a trip to Missouri. Here in the front corner is a collection of early Episcopal stoles. I found these in an antique store in Virginia. The lady in the store said, "Sir, you really should have been here yesterday. A priest from Virginia came in and bought all the new good ones." Of course, I didn't tell her I really wanted those old ones. So I asked her, "Since he got the good ones, what would you take for the rest of these?" And of course, I got them for a really good price. The black vestments on the church rack were owned by Reverend Dick Turkelson. He was a minister before his demise, who, when I first came to Hickory, was the first one that my wife said we needed to talk to and get true facts about coming to Hickory.
Here on the back wall is the pump organ, and Mrs. Upton and some friends from church will tell about the organ and sing a little for us.
My name is Mary Ann. I'm here with Rita and Bob, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about the reed organ or the pump organ here in Hart Square. It's called a pump organ because you pump air from bellows in the lower section of the organ up into a wind chest located behind these stops. And that makes air or wind available to go through reeds, hence a reed organ. There are small reeds for high notes and larger reeds for low notes, and you choose which group of reeds you would like to use by pulling out these stops. Then, of course, you select the note you want to play from the keyboard. That's basically how the reed organ works. One question that we're often asked here at Hart Square is whether the pipes up here on the organ have any musical function. For this organ, they're purely decorative. This reed organ was made in Worcester, Massachusetts in the late 1800s. It is an instrument that was used in churches to amplify and enhance the music singing of hymns. And we'd like to sing for you Amazing Grace, one of the favorite hymns here at Hart Square. Amazing
On the wall by the door is one of the most unusual and interesting pieces in the entire village. It's the Lord's Prayer from the 1800s, made by a scroll saw.
Another of Bob's favorite pieces here on the pulpit is a pulpit lantern. It's 1800s. You put a candle in it and it's made for the light to shine down to whatever the preacher is reading, and used especially at night services.
On the back wall is an early psalm and hymnal board. By it is an 1800 Paschal candlestick. This was made for special occasions. Note the baptismal bowl and two beautiful hand-forged candlesticks, each side of the communion rail. I think probably one of the most favorite services we hold here is this Christmas service. It's a candlelight service that occurs after dark. All the candles are lit. The church is decorated with holly and pine. It gives you a special feeling of closeness to God and to the closeness of a lot of our special friends. The fireplace is burning. It's just a special time we have out here in the farm.
There's a wonderful old tapestry here on the wall on the left side. You can see how old it is, and we're trying to preserve it, but we also want people to be able to see and enjoy it, so we don't want to put it away. It portrays Jesus and some little children, and as the Bible says, let the children come to me. I want to tell you that in 2010, our Bishop of Western North Carolina, Porter Taylor, did come down and consecrate the church for us. There were a few other guests from our church, and it was important that we had this church officially reconsecrated.
During the festivals, we had a number of weddings here, and you can get married for free as long as everyone dresses up, including the preacher, as you would have in the 1800s. We'll even provide a horse and buggy for the bride to come across the lake, through the covered bridges and to the church. For other weddings, there is a charge. My granddaughter, Rebecca Hart, is the executive director. She can be reached through our website at www.hartsquare.com.